Okay. We're past the midway point in our spring preparation, and it's really been, for me, much more about how we prepare, how we practice, more so, and I mentioned this to you the last time we were together, than try to figure out who's first and second team. Now as we get, past the, I would say, educational phase of how I want our football team to prepare and practice, we got to start looking at, where are those guys positionally as we move into preseason camp? What's the roster start to look like? Because now we have an eye towards preseason camp. So these next 7 practices now will be scripted a little bit differently relative to reps and who's going to take what role within the offense and defensive structure. So we'll kind of shift gears here over the next 7 practices leading into the spring game. So it's kind of where we are. Today we scrimmaged with a better intensity. I don't know if it was any cleaner, but it was certainly with better intensity and the kind of competitive spirit that I was looking for. Again, now our focus will be, for example, at the quarterbacks, who's maybe a little bit stronger at an RPO game plan, who might be a little bit better at a traditional, across the field read, offensive structure, and then tailoring it, to the quarterbacks. So that's what you're going to see over the next, 10 days to 2 weeks. With that, we'll open up to questions.
Just when it comes to those quarterbacks, what are your thoughts on what you've seen from them for the first half of spring ball?
I think each one has some different traits and characteristics. They all can play here. They all are not going to be able to play at the same time. So we're going to have some difficult choices to make. But each one of them has some different characteristics that kind of allude to what I mentioned in terms of I think each guy can do some things differently, and we're going to have to be putting together the offense to highlight their skill set. So it's been fun. It's been interesting to learn a little bit more about them. And then it'll be our job to get the best out of them and tailor the offense accordingly to what their skill set is.
Coach, over here on the right, front right, Buddy Sanji, CBS Sports Radio.
Yeah, buddy.
John Emery, we hadn't seen him in a game in
Yeah.
a year and a half. He looks physically as well as he's been.
Yep.
Could you talk about him, running back by committee? And secondly, quarterbacks look like you put a little more pressure on them. Are you happy with the way they're doing the little things, including getting rid of the football quick enough?
Yeah, so John, it's really about, John being in a better place mentally than it is physically. I think he's not as distracted. He's focused on what's most important, and what is most important is his academics and football. And I'm really proud of the progress that he's made since my short time here, and making that happen. And I think I think we're going to see him play for us this fall because of that. And that's all on him, right? He had to make that decision, and good for him. As it relates to the quarterbacks, we wanted to put them in pressure situations today because we clearly wanted to, see some of those things in terms of, how are they processing? Is the ball coming out on time? Are they guys that can handle pressure? And the one thing that they do really well, especially the veteran guys, they handle it very well. They see it. They know how to check protections. And I think more than anything else, and Joe and does a really good job of, he doesn't put these kids in a position until they're ready to protect themselves. In other words, slide the protection, check the protection, know where their hots are, and they'll be prepared for that, and I think we saw a pretty good indication of it.
Seems like, you've been mixing and matching on the offensive line a good bit, just trying stuff out.
Yeah.
I guess, how has that been going? How are you feeling about that offensive line so far?
I think some pieces are starting to, come together there. We moved Campbell, to the left tackle position. I think he's done a really nice job there. It gives us a little bit more flexibility moving, now you've got, Dummerville and a Wire, to kind of tag team. And so, with Dellinger coming back, he gives us now some flexibility. Now we can move him inside. He can, he played tackle last year. So, it's starting to come together for us a little bit. Turner's done a nice job at the center. You guys will get a chance to talk to him today about that. We wanted to make him available primarily because of that, because that offensive line is, starting to, show kind of a little bit of consistency in terms of the guys that we're rolling out there. So, again, it's early, we're 7-8 practices into it, but we are starting to see a little bit of consistency there, and I think it started when we decided to put the young guy at the left tackle position, and things kind of fell into place from there.
Can you talk about what you've seen from the secondary throughout spring? And secondly, Joe Fouché and Greg Brooks, what have they brought to this unit just as SEC starters and the experience that they have?
Yeah, I'd say first and foremost, really good communicators, good leaders, and physical. I think that's what they bring immediately. There's going to be both those guys are athletic. They're going to be around the football. They're going to arrive with a bad attitude when it comes to, the collisions. And like you mentioned, they're veteran players. So, immediately you get older and you get, guys that have played a lot of football on your defense when you add those two guys.
Hey, Coach, Billy Ambati with On3. With Will Campbell, he's out there on the edge playing against guys like B.J. Ojolari and Ali Gay. What are the traits that really stand out about his ability to hold up against those guys so far as a true freshman?
Emotional maturity. Generally you come in as a freshman, you don't know where their maturity level is emotionally. If they get beat on a play, how do they come back the next play? Is it going to affect them? He moves on to the next play. And I just think it's an emotional maturity that he carries as a freshman that's made him a guy that we can plug in as such a young player. And you don't know until you do it, because he's going to have some failures and see how he handles himself. And he just bounces right back in there and gets after it. And so that's kind of what we saw the first 3 or 4 practices. We wanted to make sure that he had that kind of maturity. And we saw it over 3 or 4 practices and said, all right, it's time. Let's get him in there.
When it comes to Charles Turner at center, that was probably maybe one of the most open spots on that offensive line coming into the spring.
Yes.
What has he done to step up in that role?
Well, he's athletic. He's got some athleticism at the position, and he's got a high football IQ. Certainly as you start to talk about your offense, or any offense or defense, down the middle requires a high IQ. Quarterback, center, middle linebacker, safety, and it shows itself in the NFL. Those are the guys that generally are in the league the longest. So, you're looking at somebody that can make all the calls, get us in the right line calls, and displays an athleticism at the position that we like as well. He's got a ways to go. He has not nailed down the position. He's going to get some push. When Mama gets back, he's coming back from an injury, and he played last year. So, you've got to have competition at the position. But he's done a really nice job, and he should be commended for it. And he's learning through some things. We were in a 2-minute drill the other day, and, that sped up for him a little bit for the first time, but that's the first time experience for him too. So there's some learning curve there for him, but we like where he is right now.
Obviously, well, first off, we haven't seen Jarek Bernard Converse too much lately. I guess what's his status, and also just speaking of quarterback depth and how you're trying to make it work back there.
Yeah, he had a Jones fracture of his foot. We repaired it, and he's doing terrific. He's on pace to be back, for our June training. And so we feel really good about where he's going to be. We don't have any, concerns about that being a lingering situation. No, it's been, it's been difficult. We're really thin at that position. It might be a position that we even look at the transfer portal, to augment that position as well. I figured that was the question of the question, right? Yeah, we have to continue to build there.
Coach, have you and your coaches come up with a format for the spring game and how you're going to separate the 4 quarterbacks? And secondly, tradition of number 7 and number 18, is that still going to carry over this year?
Yeah, those are really good questions. Right now, based upon our situation, unfortunately, it's starting to trend towards an offense versus defense, which I can't stand that. But it's just because of where we are. I mean, for us to think about 39 scholarships and then to play a true spring game was a bit of a leap maybe on my part. So that's where it's trending. I'm not ready to make that announcement today, but that's where it's trending. As for both jerseys, I've done some research on both, and certainly we know the history and tradition and what they represent. I'm going to leave it to our players to make that decision. I think it should rest with the team and the players as to how we carry that tradition on. So we will have a team meeting after the spring, and we'll have a discussion with that, and I'll honor their wishes relative to those 2 numbers. Good? All right. Thanks, guys. Gals?